I'd like to introduce a patriot friend of mine who is running for U.S. Congress here in the 3rd District. He's otherwise known as the third party guy. Nick Ivanovich has been connecting the political dots for over 20 years and has decided to run for the office of U.S. Representative to shine the light on the truth on the failures of both parties. Please welcome Nick Ivanovich.
First of all, I want to thank you, Rich, for your introduction, and all of you people for coming here tonight. Can you hear me? I tend to walk away from the microphone. I'm just a third-party guy. That's exactly, that was what the description said, and frankly, that's probably close to the mark. And I'm here tonight not to tell you anything about me in terms of my competence, although I feel a certain amount of competence because of the longevity that I've been involved, but more to share what I know with you so that you will be that much further along and understand what is happening as well. And I know the fact that you're here, you probably have a lot of understanding, but I'm going to try to contribute what I can. At the same time, let me just quickly say, I don't want to offend anybody. This is an education process, and I've made my share of the mistakes, and I've had a lot to learn, and I've still got a lot to learn. So with that, I will begin. When I was active in working with NAFTA, I was with the Pro people and with Nader people, and I made several trips to Washington, and I talked to representatives, and I got the cold shoulder a lot. I was written up in the paper in less than flattering terms. The whole idea of anybody protesting against free trade with Mexico and Canada, according to the mainstream media, was absurd. And I worked with labor people who were dumbfounded to see President Clinton get so involved with actually George H.W. Bush's NAFTA. It was written by Carla Hills and passed on to Clinton, and he took up the baton and moved it forward. Clinton, in his administration, carried the water for several trade agreements. He did NAFTA. That was successful. They went on to create the World Trade Organization under Clinton. That was in '94, another successful accomplishment. That put the Congressional oversight of trade in the hands of bureaucrats in Geneva, Switzerland. Totally unconstitutional. Then came Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall was a bill that was written in the 30s that was supposed to protect us from another Great Depression. It was controls on banks, and there was a lot of legislation that basically regulated what was going on. All of a sudden, from nowhere, there came a movement to rid the country of Glass-Steagall. That also happened under Clinton, who, a Democrat working supposedly for the working man, instead worked for the bankers. Glass-Steagall was overturned, and basically the banks were given the power to merge with insurance companies and with investment houses, and that merger created today's too big to fail. That was in 1999. Then from there we went on to the free trade with China under Clinton, and Clinton pushed the delinking of the annual review of human rights with trade with China. Up until then, we were reviewing it every year. Our Congress moved forward on that, and it was passed. We became trading partners with Communist China. Now, to look at that in its totality, I want you to know, first of all, there's a man right now who's talking a lot on the TV. His name is John Boehner. He's a Republican. He's the minority leader of the Republican Party in the House. And he's talking about bringing jobs back to America. I have the voting record of John Boehner because I went online to the sites that hold the voting records on all the issues that I'm going to talk about here. So everything I'm telling you is not my opinion, it's fact. I want you to know that John Boehner, Newt Gingrich, and Nancy Pelosi all voted yes on NAFTA. They joined forces. There was no problem with Republican versus Democrat. When it comes to globalization, they're all on the same side. When it came to moving our trade authority to Geneva, the World Trade Organization, another link in the chain of global government, again, John Boehner, Newt Gingrich, and Nancy Pelosi supported that effort. The next thing, the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, which is in fact the repeal of Glass-Steagall, the creating of the too-big-to-fails. The voting there changed slightly because Gingrich was out of office, but Boehner still supported the too-big-to-fail concept, and so did Nancy Pelosi. From there, we went to the free trade with communist China. And again, Boehner, this time with Roy Blunt and Ike Skelton, supported the free trade with communist China, which after that, our stores began to fill up with products from China, and they continued to fill up. Didn't stop at 40 or 50% Chinese or 70 or 80% Chinese. Now you go in the store and you're hard-pressed to turn over any product and look to see that it's made in the United States. Our Congress did that to us, the Republicans and the Democrats, and to this day, no one is questioning the correctness of that concept. It was passed, it was activated on, the companies moved out of our country with their technology, moved not to Australia or Canada or some somewhat friendly nation where they could find cheaper labor, but to communist China. 58,000 names on that wall in Washington fighting communism in the Vietnam War. But the Republican Party largely pushed to have free trade, beginning with détente, which started with Nixon, free trade with communist China. And that's where we are today. The greatest country in the world when it comes to freedom and personal independence, and we celebrate it every year, is now beholden to a communist country, not for just our products' everyday usage, but also our economy. We're borrowing deeply from the communist Chinese, and still we don't care. We celebrate as Independence Day as if we still are somebody. We have to think that one through, folks. Okay, it went on from there. Boehner continued to vote. He voted for the Patriot Act. He voted for the Real ID Act. And just recently in February, Congress voted to renew the Patriot Act. The renewal of the Patriot Act was so embarrassing to Congress that they didn't really want to sign on to a renewal of the Patriot Act for all its controversial aspects and attacks on our freedom, on our Fourth Amendment rights. Our phones are tapped without much regard. Our bank accounts are well known to government. If you go to the airport, you are body scanned just like a slave walking through a machine, so that government, not your spouse, you wouldn't let your spouse take pictures of you down to your most private areas. But the government says, we're going to do this, and we, like servants, not as masters as the founders intended, we step through those machines and we get irradiated just to board an airplane. Okay, continuing on with this now, I want to talk about my opponent, Ed Martin. And the only reason I'm doing this is because, again, I believe we need to know what is going on. We can no longer just vote red, blue, Democrat. I've been a lifelong Republican, therefore I'm going to pull the Republican lever. Because what has happened to those two parties is that I believe they have they march to a different drummer than the American people, which is why we all feel so disconnected. They're not listening to us, is what people are saying. So I want to tell you that Ed Martin, first of all, was endorsed by Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich, who is, in my mind, a globalist, voted for NAFTA, voted for sending our trade supervision to the World Trade Organization, the UN-type organization, global government. And Newt Gingrich has also, he's on record, sitting with Nancy Pelosi, saying, we don't agree on much, but we see eye to eye on climate change. Climate change is the forerunner to cap and trade or cap and tax, the taxing of everything that produces carbon on the planet. The purpose of that is to generate funds, as was said in Copenhagen this last winter, to generate funds for the IMF so that they can operate world government, which was announced this last December, the dawn of world government. Obama has contributed as much as he can to the $100 billion fund to launch global government. So Newt Gingrich is hand in hand with that, and he has endorsed Ed Martin. Now, Ed Martin claims to be a man of the grassroots, and I have no problem with whatever he says because he is fairly new at the game as well, and so he's entitled to say that. But when he walks with somebody like a Newt Gingrich, who's well on record for being much more than just grassroots, he's global. He's wanting to take these borders of our country and literally erase them so global corporations and banks can have their way with our country. The next person that endorsed him is Roy Blunt. Roy Blunt is a signer, he's a yes person on the free trade with China, communist China. He also favors the Patriot Act. He also voted for the Real ID Act, and he has voted for the renewal of the Patriot Act. So here's a man who is well committed to the government that I don't think many of us want to see continue. And he has endorsed a man who claims to be of the grassroots. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about his service to Matt Blunt, our governor, past governor. You've heard of the NAFTA highway, a concept of a road coming from Laredo, Cardenas in Mexico, up through Mexico, across the border, through the United States, and on up to Canada. Part of the means for delivering goods throughout the United States and bypassing the ports on either side of our country. The idea being a bigger, better port down in Mexico where labor is cheap will facilitate Chinese goods coming into our country. And if you go online and look at the Smart Port site in Kansas City, it's online, you can read them talking about how beneficial it's going to be to bring more products into our country, more products from China. The whole game is how can we get products from China here faster, easier, and cheaper. The Smart Port concept is one to have an inland port in Kansas City that would be actually designated as Mexican territory. And the truck traffic and the train traffic coming up from that port in southern Mexico would bypass the border electronically and travel right into Kansas City. And Matt Blunt, our past governor, thought that was a tremendous idea. What a way to advance our economy than having a Chinese port right in Kansas City. Ed Martin was in that office right alongside of Matt Blunt. He was chief of staff. He had to know what was going on. He had to know that NAFTA highway and the whole idea of erasing our borders is part of the program.